Welcome back to Marion's World, everyone, and I've got another standalone technique tutorial to show you today, and it's all about painting backgrounds for your stitching. I'm just using an old pillowcase here, and I'm going to use my Inktense blocks to show you how to do watercolour-y backgrounds. So if you don't have Inktense, you can use just cheap artist's acrylic paints. It's what I used. They work very well indeed, but I now have the Inktense and they also work very beautifully. And I'm going to show you, it's a different technique from what they were designed for, I think, which was for doing painting on paper. And it's a totally different way of using them when you're using them on fabrics. But the effects are beautiful. It's quite a fun thing to do. It's a very creative thing to do. And it is the only way you will get backgrounds like this. You can't buy this type of thing. You can't thrift fabric in these colours. You have to make them yourself. So why not? It doesn't take very long and you'll have a unique piece of embroidery when you've stitched it. So I'll just cut you straight into it, and I hope you enjoy watching how to create beautiful backgrounds for your stitching. So I do have a palette of Inktense and I do love them. But before I had them, I used artists' cheap acrylic paints very successfully. So whatever I'm doing with this, you can do with acrylic paints. Just got plain water. Water is your friend for painting fabric with Inktense. I've got a piece of old worn out pillowcase, so it's just plain cotton. I've just torn it off. There's a hole in it here and I've still got the bonny edge on it. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to paint this up, and it's because I'm painting a background for a piece of embroidery that I am about to start, and that's why I thought a standalone video would be good for it. Quite often I paint it directly onto my cutting mat and I just mop everything up afterwards. But another way of doing it is to do it on top of a piece of greaseproof paper. What I do first is crumple it all up. By crumpling it all up, you encourage it to lie flatter. The water doesn't run off as much, and actually you can get some cool textures with the paint. So once it's all crumpled up, I can just lie it flat out again. Sort of means you can help the water stay there instead of it running off the table. Put my fabric down, and this is just really meant for backgrounds for stitching on, which I find really lovely. Sometimes you don't want a bought printed cloth, or you don't want something white or cream. You want something a bit more colourful, and so this is how I prepare the backgrounds. So once you've got your crumpled up paper down, you can put your cloth over the top, and then it's time to paint. Now I usually use a big brush and I actually water the fabric first. So Inktense, as far as I am aware, were never intended for fabric. It was to use the blocks as pastels, on colouring in or painting on paper, and I don't know how they do for that because I've never done it. But I find that they're absolutely fantastic for painting cloth with beautiful watercolour-y backgrounds, and you can get different effects. But the first thing I do is actually water the cloth, and occasionally I actually just pour the water on like that because it's easier, and I let it soak through. And it won't soak through the paper because the greaseproof paper will keep everything fine, and it's okay to have pooling water. I find that it's really nice. So let's just start. So I don't take these out usually. You can do, I'll show you that in a minute, but I usually just pick the colour up from the blocks, and I use the blocks like a watercolour palette. You find if you've already got the water on, when you put the paint down, or the ink down, it'll just fade away into the cloth, and you don't get any hard edges, you don't get any lines. So if I did the same thing there with a block, I'll take a different one just because I don't want it to pick up the wet one. So if I go to the dry cloth here, I can definitely colour in with the block like this. I can make some, and I'll do two colours, and then you can see what happens. I'll use this one as well, and then we'll contrast. I'll take a different contrast, and then we'll be able to see the difference of the different method. So I'll use that orange. and I just colour it in. And I've got that bit of pink as well. So if I put water on these now, the colours are going to beautifully come in, tense up. You get a wonderful colour. They will mix together, but in my opinion, you never really get rid of the marks of where you've coloured in. And it always, doesn't matter how much water I put on there, you can always see it. So if I contrast that with putting the water on first, I'm going to make sure there's plenty. In fact, I've got everything so wet. So I'm going to do the same colours. So I'll pick up this purple. That was this one. Just make sure I've got plenty of water on my brush. I'm going to run that purple in there. I'll change and water my brush down, and I'll get the orange. I can run them in together. I'll get that lime. What did I get? The pink. I'm not sure which one it was. I got both of them. But I hope you can see the difference between the way they have sort of gone together without hardly any mark of transition. There are no marks of the blocks, whereas here it doesn't matter how much I do it, I can't get rid of those marks. And so from my experience, watering the cloth first is absolute key. And then once the cloth's watered, you could actually, if you wanted, pick something up and use it, because it'll go down in a different way because the cloth's already wet. And so you can definitely make marks where you want to make them. And here I can see the marks of the crumpled up paper underneath, which I quite often really like. So if I go on here, I can use the side of the block to make different marks. But because the cloth's wet, I just don't get this scribbling type of a thing. And if I want to leave them as really good marks like that, I can do. Can go over that. But if I try and do that on the dry cloth, it's just not, for me, it's not the same. So I am going to be doing some watercolour background for some stitching. And you can make things really pale, you can make things really vibrant. I'm going to water them down because I'm looking for a paler background entirely. And I don't mind which way I do the paint. I quite like the marks that happen at the edges where I transition to dry fabric. I quite like that. And in the end, I can cut these up into smaller pieces if I want, or I can use it as a bigger piece. I'm just going to move this over and show you that because all this colour is on the greaseproof paper, if I move this cloth over to the piece I haven't done yet, it'll actually pick that colour up, and then I'm not wasting any. And so there's a different effect I can get entirely. I can just use the cloth to mop the colour up, and I can do that as an actual thing. If I move over, I can put some water on here. Just put some water on the paper. I'll drop some colour in. Let's drop this lovely inky blue. And I'll drop this nice green. And here. I'm particularly trying to mix these up. I just want to show you a different way of doing it. So now let's just put the cloth over the top. This is going to be a lot more random. So I'm just going to put the cloth over. I'm just going to mop that up. And look at that, that's beautiful. It's beautiful already. And I can either put my brush down and help that into the cloth, or I can leave it and just let it dry. Actually, I think this is really lovely. I can see that with hollyhocks embroidered on top, or foxgloves. It would make a beautiful watercolour background for flowers. And it never bothers me if I think that colour hasn't come out right, because there's always something else I can do. I can wait until it's dry and then I can paint over it again, or add something else, or I can just stitch on top. And I really like this spotting here. And if I look underneath, there's still water there. There's still water I can pick up. And even though it's not much, it's enough to make colour. And I can use either side of the fabric. So this is really the wrong side when you think about it. If I look on the other side, look at that. That's glorious. So I'm actually going to dry this off with a hairdryer. I'm just going to mop the rest of this water up. I never waste it. I always mop up every single piece. Because they're expensive to buy, I don't want to waste any, and you never know what effects the water and the cloth might have together. So in the end I just use it like a duster. Because I'm quite happy to have some random effect. And then I use this paper again the next time. So I'm just going to go off and I'm going to dry this whole piece of cloth, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's dry, because it will dry a lot paler. I'm back with the dried cloth. You can see it's faded down quite nicely. This is the side that I was painting on, and you can see the marks where I made them. This is all faded in together really prettily, and it depends what you're painting for. You might want a really dark background, or you may want something more pale. If I show you the other side, the side that picked up the paint from the paper, if I turn it round, just look how beautiful that is. So this was the side that was actually facing the paper, and I think it's come out absolutely marvellous. I really love where the droplets of water with the Inktense in have just gone and just made this random beautiful effect, and that is definitely something I will be using, not necessarily on my next stitching, but what maybe something else, because I think that's absolutely superb. But this is also lovely, and it's slightly different from the top side because you get the marks of the wrinkles of the paper in, which I think is really nice, and you can actually make that appear more if you do it. You can make those creases appear more. But I was just trying to do a very basic Inktense tutorial. So I've done that one, and I've also done another one. This is on a bit of old tablecloth. You can see I've still got the hem edge on. That is the top side, so that's the side that I did, and I've concentrated on blues, greens and purples and a bit of blue here. You can see where I wiped the stuff up off the bottom, but the back of that is also lovely, slightly more muted and faded together. And it hasn't got the marks where I've put the crayon across. Sometimes I like those marks, sometimes I don't want them on. And so I haven't decided yet which side of this I'll use, but both pieces of cloth have come out amazing and could be cut into smaller pieces to make anything you want, or just embroider over the top of. It's not the sort of colours you're going to be able to find in thrifted fabric, or bought fabric for that matter. You can only, I think you can only do these for yourself. So I hope that's been helpful. If it has, drop me a like. YouTube always likes it when videos get likes, and subscribe if you want to. I don't always do lots of painting, but I do use the backgrounds, and I am doing lots of embroidery. So thanks a lot everyone, and I will see you in the next video.